Shalom and welcome back to Weekly Torah Talks. I am your host Shlomo, and man oh man do we have a loaded topic today. You may be wondering, what's with the red nose, Shlomo? Well, that's because it's Purim! Okay, I'm getting a little carried away with the Purim joy. Let's snap back to reality and teach you about how Purim and the Beit HaMikdash are closely intertwined with one another. Okay, I'm back to myself, and I'm even back in my house. Baruch Hashem, let's get into the story. To really get the Purim story, we must begin with a question. What was Mordechai doing in Shushan, capital of Persia? If this question doesn't bother you, let me give you a brief background, and then you'll understand my problem. The year is 586 BCE, and the Jews just suffered the terrible destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, the first holy temple in Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar and his Babylonian empire came and killed many and exiled the rest to Babylon and still others to Egypt and to Persia. Just 52 years later, the Persians overthrow the Babylonians and become the new ruling power in the land of Israel. As opposed to the Babylonian Empire, who expelled the inhabitants of the land that it overtook, the Persians, they had a different principle, and that was to return those citizens that had been expelled back to their land and allow them to worship their own God. And so, the Persian king at the time, Koresh, or Cyrus, called on the Jews to return to Israel and allow them to build the temple. This call to return would be the first of two waves of Jewish aliyah from the exile. The first wave of just over 42,000 Jews came in the first year of Cyrus's reign under the Jewish leadership of Zerubbabel. Note that Mordechai of the Purim story was in this group. The second wave, led by Ezra the scribe, or Ezra HaSofer, came only 18 years later after the completion of the second Beit HaMikdash. This leaves us with a big question. If Mordechai had already moved to Israel, why did he travel back to Persia? Using the Medrash, a compilation of ancient Jewish wisdom that provides a deeper understanding of many of the stories of Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, including Megillat Esther, in which the Purim story takes place, we will be able to answer this question and see how the Purim story is really the backdrop for the rebuilding of the second Beit HaMikdash, the second Holy Temple in Jerusalem. As described in the 4th chapter of the book of Ezra, the Jews who made Aliyah with Zerubbabel weren't received warmly by their non-Jewish neighbors. Initially, the non-Jews paid advisors to hinder and frighten the Jews from building. These antics would continue throughout the conclusion of Cyrus's reign. Our sages teach us that as the Jews worked on the walls of Jerusalem, the non-Jews came and said, "You're building without permission of the king." And the Jews replied, "It's with permission of the king." Both groups then agreed to appoint a representative to explain their side to the king. The non-Jews chose Haman, while the Jews chose Mordechai. From this medrash, we see that the rivalry between Mordechai and Haman started long before Mordechai refused to bow to Haman in the Purim story. Rather, their contention began in the heart of Jerusalem as a struggle for the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. If we think about what we learned in last week's weekly Torah talks, this Beit HaMikdash struggle makes a lot of sense. Haman, a descendant of Amalek, sought to eradicate God awareness from the world. Mordechai, the representative of the Jews, sought to make the world a more God-conscious place. The Beit HaMikdash, a place of daily miracles, therefore served as the quintessential battleground between the philosophies of God awareness and God ignorance. As part of Haman's effort against the Beit HaMikdash, the book of Ezra describes that Shimshai the scribe, who our sages identify as a son of Haman, authors and sends a letter of accusation to Cyrus, claiming that the desire of the Jews to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash and the walls of Yerushalayim was an act of rebellion, and should their building project be successful, the Jews will stop paying taxes to the kingdom. Cyrus didn't like the sound of this, and brings the building to a halt. Now, Mordechai must make his effort to grant the Jews permission once again to complete the building of the second Beit HaMikdash. For this reason, he travels to Shushan, and this is where the Purim story really begins. Like we mentioned earlier, Mordechai was part of the first Aliyah to Israel, where a mere 42,360 Jews opted to settle the land and rebuild the destroyed first Beit HaMikdash. The large majority of Jews, however, chose to stay in exile, and, likely to Mordechai's dismay, seemed to have been rather enjoying themselves there as they partook in the lavish 180-day-long party that King Achashverosh, successor of Cyrus, threw for himself and for his kingdom. Our sages teach that Achashverosh made this party as a way to celebrate the demise of the Jewish people. You see, Achashverosh knew the prophecy of Jeremiah, of Yirmiyahu, that the exile would last for only 70 years. And according to Achashverosh's calculations, those 70 years had come and gone. And yet, no Beit HaMikdash had been fully built. Therefore, Achashverosh's conclusion was that God must have rejected the Jews permanently. And, as an anti-Semite, this was a cause for major celebration. Other sages say that the party was to celebrate the fact that the building of the second Beit HaMikdash had already been brought to a halt for 3 whole years, an apparent significant number that warranted ecstasy and euphoria. You'd think that only the anti-Semites were joining this party, but our sages tell us that the Jews in fact also participated. In Megillat Esther, it's written that some of the vessels used in the party were quote-unquote different vessels. In other words, vessels from the Beit HaMikdash. We also find that Vashti, queen of Achashverosh at the time, and descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, brought the garments of the Kohen Gadol for Achashverosh to wear at the party. In other words, this party, which the Jews to some extent participated in, was a celebration of the Jews' downfall, specifically vis-a-vis the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash and its failure to be rebuilt. The Medrash notes that one reason why Vashti was subsequently killed at the party was because she did not allow for Achashverosh to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash. She would say to him, "That which my grandfather Nebuchadnezzar destroyed, you, Achashverosh, wish to rebuild?" Rav Yisrael Ariel, founder of the Temple Institute, notes that if Vashti, a non-Jew, was put to death for her action against the Beit HaMikdash, then how much more so do these Jews who participated in this anti-Beit HaMikdash party deserve a death sentence? And, of course, that is precisely what Achashverosh and Haman decreed upon the Jews in the Purim story. I want us to fast forward through many of the significant events in the Megillah, and just to say them quickly out for us, Esther becomes the new queen of Achashverosh. Mordechai sends her to beg for mercy from the king. Esther and all the Jews fast for 3 days. Esther invites Achashverosh and Haman to a feast, and Haman makes gallows to hang Mordechai upon. Achashverosh, catching up to where we are in the story, Achashverosh cannot fall asleep at night, and reviews his chronicles, and finds that he owes Mordechai an act of honor for having saved him at an earlier time from Bigtan and Teresh. Achashverosh asks Haman, what should be done to a man whom the king wishes to honor? Haman, thinking that Achashverosh wanted to give him honor, tells the king to have such a man rode around the town square with a noble priest leading him and singing his praises. Well, as for Haman's suggestion, the king orders Haman to bring Mordechai royal clothing and ride him on a horse around the city. Our sages take note of what Mordechai was up to when Haman came to confer honor upon him. Our sages teach that when Haman went to retrieve Mordechai, he found Mordechai teaching the people about the kemitza process, a method of scooping flour from the certain Beit HaMikdash offerings. In other words, Mordechai sought to excite and to educate the people about the Beit HaMikdash service. It seems that this action, which had come among the 3 days of fasting and prayer, was accepted as a form of repentance for the Jews' disgrace towards the Beit HaMikdash. Now that they've repented, the story takes a complete 180 turn, and those Jews who were set for destruction were effectively being paraded around the city with Mordechai as their representative once again. Continuing on in the story, and Esther reveals that she is Jewish, and therefore Haman's decree to kill the Jews would kill her as well. Achashverosh orders Haman to be killed. Haman is then hung on the same gallows that he had prepared for Mordechai, and his wealth is given to Esther, who then gives it to Mordechai. The Medrash teaches that Haman's wealth was split into thirds. A third went to Esther and Mordechai, a third to support Torah scholars, and a third to help the eventual rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. And the story isn't over yet. Achashverosh informs Mordechai and Esther that he cannot revoke the decree for the massacre of the Jews on the 13th of Adar, since, according to Persian law, once a decree is made by the king, it cannot be revoked. Instead, Achashverosh gives Mordechai and Esther his royal signet, and they issue a new decree that on the 13th of Adar, the Jews are permitted to fight back. Mordechai rode on a horse to ready the Jews for battle. As he rode, he wore a crown on his head with a picture of Jerusalem drawn upon it, and Kohanim would go along his side blasting trumpets. All this symbolized that this battle was a result of the Jews' repentance of and desire for the Beit HaMikdash. Though the Megillah ends with the Jews successfully winning the war and Mordechai being promoted to the viceroy to Achashverosh, the deeper Purim Beit HaMikdash story continues. Esther remains queen to Achashverosh, and, according to the Medrash, together they have a son, Darius II. When Achashverosh passes on, Darius becomes king of Persia. It is during Darius' second year of rule that he permits the Jews to resume and finish building the second Beit HaMikdash. As is stated in the 4th chapter of the book of Ezra, then the work of the house of God, which was in Jerusalem, was stopped, and it was suspended until the second year of the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. So, Darius, the in fact Jewish king of Persia, fulfills Mordechai's mission of coming to Persia in the first place. The Beit HaMikdash is now rebuilt, and the Jewish vision of a God-conscious life takes root once again. Now that's a Purim story.